had never been the kind of person who attracted attention. In fact, I made a habit of blending into the background, avoiding confrontation, and keeping my feelings to myself. But when it came to Professor Carter, my emotions were anything but subtle. He was cold, distant, and unknowably a stark contrast to my own quiet, unnoticed existence. I was just another face in his lecture hall, another nameless student who didn't matter. Or at least, that's what I thought until everything changed that day. It started with a simple inquiry during office hours, one I'd almost hesitated to ask. But something inside me urged me to speak, to somehow get closer to him. I wasn't prepared for how that would alter the course of everything. Professor Carter stood by his desk, eyes hidden behind thick-framed glasses, his posture as stiff as ever. His voice was calm, almost mechanical, as he explained the theory behind our current project. I nodded, pretending to understand, my heart pounding in my chest. As he spoke, I couldn't help but notice the slight furrow in his brow, the barely perceptible shift in his stance whenever our gazes met. He was beautiful in a way that was almost painful to look at. His sharp jawline, dark eyes, and the way his lips would press together when he was frustrated, everything about him drew me in, even though I knew I shouldn't let it. "Is there anything else?" he asked, his tone neutral. I hesitated. My throat felt tight, but I had to ask. "Professor, do you ever get lonely?" The question hung in the air for a moment, and I immediately regretted it. His eyes flickered with something unreadable before he gave a tight, almost imperceptible shake of his head. "I don't think about things like that," he replied, his voice colder now. He turned away, busying himself with the papers on his desk. I left his office that day feeling smaller than ever, my heart aching with the weight of his indifference. But deep inside, I knew that I hadn't given up. Couldn't. There was something in his eyes that told me he was hiding something he didn't want to show. It was as if he was waiting for someone to reach out to him, but he couldn't bear to admit it. That night, I lay in my dorm bed, replaying the scene over and over in my head. My fingers trembled as I stared at the ceiling, wondering if anyone would ever truly see me the way I saw him. Days passed, and the distance between us only seemed to grow. I continued to attend his lectures, hoping for a glimpse of something more, but he remained the same distant, professional, untouchable. And yet, there was a part of me that refused to give up. I couldn't understand why I felt so strongly about him, why the idea of being close to him made my pulse race and my breath catch in my throat. It was a rainy afternoon when it happened. I had stayed late in the library, working on an assignment, when I heard someone's footsteps echo down the hallway. I turned, expecting to see a fellow student, but instead, there he was, Professor Carter, walking with purpose, his eyes scanning the empty corridor. He didn't seem to notice me at first, but when our eyes met, he stopped. There was a brief, uncomfortable silence before he took a step toward me. "Are you all right?" he asked, his voice softer than I had ever heard it. His gaze softened, just for a moment, and I felt my heart skip a beat. I'm fine," I stammered, my usual composure crumbling under his scrutiny. The words came out before I could stop them. I'm just not good enough for you." His expression shifted, confusion flitting across his face before it was replaced with something darker, something unreadable. For a moment, I thought he might walk away, but instead he reached out, his hand hovering in the air between us. It was a gesture I didn't understand, but it felt like something I had been waiting for. Before I could react, his hand settled on my shoulder. The contact was gentle, but it sent a wave of heat through me, causing my body to tense. I looked up at him, my mind swirling with emotions I couldn't put into words. "I didn't mean to make you feel that way," he said quietly, his voice almost a whisper. His fingers lingered on my skin, and I could feel the pulse in my chest quicken. "But you are enough. You matter." Couldn't breathe. His words felt like a confession, an admission of something that had been hidden for far too long. I opened my mouth to speak, but the words wouldn't come. And then it happened. I collapsed into his arms, my body trembling with a mix of relief and fear. The weight of my emotions, The loneliness I had carried for so long came crashing down all at once. His arms tightened around me, holding me close, as though he was trying to shield me from the world. "I've been waiting for you," he murmured against my hair, his voice rough with something I couldn't quite place. I pulled away slightly, looking up at him with wide eyes. "What do you mean?" But he didn't answer. Instead, he leaned down, his lips brushing against my forehead. And in that moment, I understood. We were both broken in our own ways, but together we could heal. The rain had stopped by the time we left the library, the streets glistening in the dim light. We walked side by side, our shoulders brushing ever so slightly, but it felt like more. With every step, I felt the walls between us crumble, piece by piece. He wasn't just my professor anymore. He was someone who saw me, someone who understood the ache in my heart. When we finally reached the steps of the building, he stopped and turned to face me. His expression was serious, but there was something softer in his eyes now. "I don't know what this means," he said, his voice low, "but I can't keep pretending I don't feel it." I smiled, the first real smile I had worn in what felt like forever. "I don't need you to pretend," I whispered, my hand reaching up to touch his. And for the first time, I felt like I was exactly where I was supposed to be, right next to him. The days that followed were filled with a quiet tension, a fragile balance between the reality of what we had shared and the uncertainty of the future. We had made a silent promise to each other, that nightan unspoken vow that we would figure this out together, despite the weight of the world that seemed determined to keep us apart. I saw less of Professor Carter in the halls, and when we did cross paths, it was always with a subtle, knowing glance. It was like we were both trying to navigate this new dynamic between Yuson, where the walls had come down, but the world outside still insisted on keeping its distance. There were no grand gestures, no declarations of love, just quiet moments of shared understanding. It was a late afternoon, a few weeks later, when I found myself in his office again. This time, it wasn't a question or a project I had come to discuss. It was just me, standing in front of him, feeling the weight of everything that had happened between us. He looked up from his desk, his expression softening when he saw me. The tension in the air was palpable, but this time, it felt different, more natural, like we had crossed some invisible threshold, and there was no going back. "I don't know what comes next," he said, his voice steady but laced with uncertainty. "But I want to find out with you." I didn't have the answers either, but in that moment, I realized something important: I didn't need them. What mattered was that we were in this together, no matter what. The uncertainty of the future didn't seem so frightening anymore because I knew we would face it side by side. I smiled, my heart swelling with warmth. "We'll figure it out," I whispered, stepping closer. "Together." And for the first time, I truly believed it. The future was unknown, but in his arms, I had found something that mattered more than anything else: someone who saw me, who cared for me, and who, despite all the walls we had to climb, had decided to stay. The story of us hadn't ended. It was only just beginning. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.